Alright, let me check one more time. Scythe, okay. So, alright, hey, I'm Weather from the Summer School Discord, and this game I'm going to be following the Irelia top versus a Gnar. And like always, I'm going to start by reviewing win conditions. It's really important, and you need to be able to get into the mindset of having a game plan before you start a game and understanding where your strengths are and how to play to them, where the enemy team's strengths are and how to play against them. So at the start of this matchup, you know that Irelia into Gnar is an okay matchup. I'm not super familiar with it, but it's not bad for either one. You are going to have to worry about early sustain, but since you got Corrupting Potion, that shouldn't be a huge deal. Doran Shield's also fine. But yeah, earlier sustain is what you're kind of going for. And overall, your team comp as a whole is driven by long-range engages. Now, this is a little bit interesting because two of your teammates want to sit in the fog of war and then engage off of something. The Zoe is going to be throwing her bubbles from the fog of war, and the Zac is going to be looking for his slingshot into the middle of the enemy team. This is going to put your team in a pretty normal situation where they're going to have about 2 people or 3 people in the lane, and the other 2 are off to the side. In order to do this properly, and in the best possible way, for example, if you're trying to siege mid, right, you're going to want a pink somewhere where you can control the side of the lane so you can throw bubbles or you can have Zac engage towards the center of the lane. You need to control the sides of the lanes. And specifically over these ridges. If you are getting sieged into, you have excellent potential with this, where the Zoe could go over these walls or the Zac can go over these walls, and you also have excellent potential with dives. But because of your long-ranged engage potential, you're going to have to make sure that your positioning is always ready to react to these things, which means you might need to be able to take a little extra poke, because the brand might be able to get a stun off on you while you're sitting somewhere nearby and ready to follow up on one of your team's engages. But you also could just be playing purely into a split push mentality and looking for their rotations into your lane. Since they have to play to the side of the lane, and Draven and Alistar is a pretty strong dueling combination, you could be playing between 2 lanes pretty efficiently, because the Zoe could start a fight up from over here, or it could start a fight up from over here, and it takes about 5 seconds to walk between these 2 potential fights. Zac can do the same thing. So you could be looking just to split push, or you could be looking to stand in position in a way that is allowing for aggressive, long-ranged engages. I think that Irelia is good with split pushing, but if you build for split pushing, you're going to be stuck split pushing. Sometimes that's a bad thing, depending upon who can split push against you and how your matchup plays in the future. Irelia's matchup in the future against Gnar is more Gnar favored, I believe. I believe early game it's for Irelia, late game it's kind of more Gnar. And I think the Yasuo late game you'll be able to duel him just fine, but he might be able to kite you out and avoid a fight. And Vayne should be a mixed bag. This you could see going either way. Relies really on how your stun hits and how her stun hits. So what I'm saying is, split pushing could be risky, but your team fight is really, really strong on your side, and they don't have a whole lot of knockups to play into the Yasuo, so your team fight is better. I would be looking for your build to have a little more health and a little more team fight power than the standard split push Irelia build. They also are a lot of AD, and they only have Brand for their magic damage. So if you play around the Brand and keep him into a side lane or something like that with the way that you manage waves, or you burst him down with one of your long-ranged engages, all you have to worry about is health and armor. So I would be focusing primarily armor and health and getting, your Triforce early, because you still want to have that spike. And then looking to play towards a little bit of split push until first towers go down, then be trying to rotate into a team fight situation once more of the map opens up, because it's really easy for the Zoe to use the the enemy jungle, once you open up these first turrets. Once these first turrets are gone, your team comp really shines. You also shine in counter engages with, as I was mentioning over here, you could play out of these out of your own jungle just as efficiently. So yeah, that's kind of how you're going to be playing this game. The enemy team has a lot that wants to split push, but also a mixed amount of team fight and catch. Vayne is going to want to split push for a long time. Yasuo's going to want to split push. Gnar can split push or team fight, and they got a bunch of catch potential, which again falls into the necessity of controlling the sides of these lanes. Because if they're able to catch you where they have more people and they can collapse on you when you're not prepared for it, right? A Zoe doesn't actually have an escape, and the Zoe could die, which would lead to a free objective. So you have to make sure you get proper vision on the sides of the lanes to set up for it. And there goes my long rant at the beginning of the game about what you should be trying to set up for and what your general play is as a team. A small problem, whenever you're sitting at your turret like this, you give them the opportunity to invade. This is a really easy thing to improve upon. If you just stand over here, you're providing a lot more protection than you realize. Ideally, if you're putting a proper vision line, you have your top laner ready to block this, mid laner's blocking this, jungle's watching here, bot lane's watching here. See, then they have no access to any part of your jungle, and your level 1 is then secured. If you're standing at your turret like this, you're giving up a potential first blood, you're giving up a potential experience lead, you're giving up a potential red buff, which for a lot of junglers is their level 3 gank, which means you're giving up potential lane advantages, because maybe this means you die in the future to a lane where your jungle can't counter gank. And all of it starts with just how you play the level 1. Not even the level 1 in like once minions are here, but before minions even spawn, what you're doing. This small advantage spirals out of control. Think about games that you surrender at 15 minutes and understand that the time value of money and advantages, it snowballs, right? So every game you surrender at 15 minutes is more often than not won earlier in the time frame, right? Earlier in the clock. So every game you surrender at 15 minutes, the first 1 minute of a game is about 1/10 of those games you lose at 15 minutes. That's 1/10 more games you could win by just providing the proper protection. It's easy to. If you're in a game, be playing the game. This isn't playing the game. This is changing your music or texting your girlfriend or something. You don't need to be doing this. Unnecessary disadvantage for your entire team that you don't see yourself in top lane. You just see your jungler as lost his buff and then isn't helping you. And it's a really easy thing to fix, too. So, you didn't use your corrupting potion when you went in. That's a mechanical issue, and judging by how little you're actually using corrupting potion, you probably should just start Dorn Shield. Corrupting potion trades are specifically for, you use the corruption potion when you go in, and you also use it to sustain slightly after. That would give you the little bit of extra damage that essentially an item would actually provide. By not using a corrupting potion when you're going in, you are essentially just starting with 3 potions. That's 150 gold worth of items that you spent all of your money on to start the game. So you can't use a corrupting potion like that. That is a waste of a first item, and you should be trying to get something else. You also ended up blowing your teleport for something that not necessarily just a bad trade, but bad item choice for your playstyle. Dorn Shield is much better for you. You don't have flash, and you take this aggressive play when normally this is about whenever your jungler would be able to come up. So you're taking trade just because you think that you need to win this matchup. But again, look, you're not using your corrupting potion. You really shouldn't start that item if you're not going to use it. This is a wasted item. And if you look at how much health he has left, he has 82 health, and if you read what your corrupting potion does, That is 16 magic damage over 3 seconds. I'm pretty sure you would have been able to at least make him flash away from you here, because otherwise he would have died. If you're also going to be taking extended trades like that, by using your stun early, you're only using it as a slow, which lets him able to trade back onto you. And you're fighting in a minion wave, which is going to put yourself at an even further disadvantage. This is just unnecessary and risky. As I said, like the jungle, let's look at the first problem. Let's look at one of these problems at a time. The first problem here is you don't have teleport, you don't have flash. So you're going into this fight where he could just straight up walk away, come back to lane, and any damage that's left on you stays. Any damage that's left on him is gone because he teleported back. So you're out-sustained this time, which means you lose levels. That is the trade you choose here based off of what resources you have remaining. Now let's talk about the timing you chose. A jungler's standard clear finishes their third level, level 3, their second buff around 2.5 to 3 minutes and are looking to gank between 3 minutes and 3.5 minutes. Since you have no flash at this point in time, let's see where Trundle is right here, right? Trundle could have easily walked up and been here for this risky play. So you chose a bad time to do this, which means you're not at all considering where the enemy jungle is. You didn't even have a ward down, which means that you're not, well, I don't actually think you would have been able to get a ward down because you were still like, your level 1 trade is the reason all of this is happening. But this is an example of why it's a risky trade. It's an unnecessary trade. And then the third thing is you have no advantage when you go in. The advantages of trading, the windows to trade are different a little bit in top lane, but still kind of the same as other lanes. It's because you're playing a melee that has different windows to look for. Ranged characters has a lot easier time punishing than melee characters, but you do have a dash. The first window you'd want to look for is cooldowns. And tell me, does he use any cooldowns here before you go in? He uses his boomerang? His boomerang, okay. Well, his boomerang has like a 4-second cooldown, and guess what? His boomerang's going to come out. It's not? Oh, there it is. He missed it. That would have killed you. He has flash. And, okay, so anyways, cooldowns is the first thing. The second thing is resources, and if you're looking at things like potions, you supposedly should out-sustain him because you have potions, but you're not using them, and you're not aware of them. And this also, though, includes things like summoner spells and mana. Gnar has no mana disadvantage. You're chunking yourself in mana, chunking yourself in health. You have no summoners. So that's your second disadvantage. The third thing is related to minions, and it's in a lot of different ways. Normally I talk about denying CS because whenever they're going to last hit, that's your window to land skill shots. But in top lane and in this specific situation, the way you're positioning is going to draw all of this minion aggro, and in slow motion, look at how much damage the minions do to you. Right? And Gnar totally misplays this because he could have warded that and kept the minion aggro on you, and he could have flashed, and he could have autoed, and he could have queued this. So, yeah, you should have died here. And now just back to your vision. That was an unnecessary TP by Gnar, actually, because the wave is going to push in. If I was the Gnar here, I would have frozen you out of these waves, and then you would have been stuck without a lot of gold. It's not a really safe time to push up. You saw Trundle down here moments ago. You don't have flash, and here's Trundle. Yeah, you don't track the enemy jungle at all. And you don't use your ward. So, okay, since you don't track the enemy jungle at all, let me give you, for starters, the basics, the very basics of tracking the enemy jungle. Aside from just predicting that he was still going to look for this gank when you literally saw him seconds ago, that's one problem you're going to have to get over on yourself, on your own. But the next thing you want to be thinking about is what camps they should be doing at what time. Now, this first clear, as I said, has a window of around they're looking for a gank between like 3 minutes and 3.5 minutes, but he stayed up here because of the wave positioning. He saw you, he saw Zach, etc. He stayed here for a lot of reasons. But anyways, 3 minutes to 3.5 minutes he's looking to come here. If it's the slowest jungle clear, it's a 4-minute gank. After that, the jungler is bot lane. The only reason they'd stay is if they were doing something cheeky or if you're in a terrible position or something like that. So at 4 minutes, normally you're able to start playing aggressive top lane again. Then what you need to do is you need to watch for these camps to respawn. They show you fucking hourglasses on the minimap. The yellow one means that the jungler will be there soon. Whenever it's spawned, you know, they got the skull there or whatever the fuck those things are, the dots, you know the jungler is there now. So, but because of that, you're able to track the enemy jungler pretty successfully up till about 15 minutes when they start handing away buffs. You also can predict based off of what level they are and what camps they probably did, where they're going to be next. So in a standard clear going topside, right, and he's level 3, the most he could do is do one more camp, maybe scuttle, and then base because his next experience and next gold is bottom. That's the next location he'd go because of camps. Not just his buffs, but camps. And you can figure that out based off of which direction they're clearing, what level they are, and there's a lot of other things like you can count the CS, but I don't fucking do that. And knowing what they should have cleared or what they can clear. Because if there's nothing left up here, they're not going to stay up here. It's just not efficient. So about 4.5 minutes, for sure, your lane is safe. 4.5 minutes till about 6 minutes, and then it gets dangerous again because guess what? They're clearing up. And after they get off successful ganks or they start playing towards specific objectives, of course, this goes around a little bit. You can't completely rely on these assumptions. But if you look at the minimap right now and you have no vision to work with, and you haven't seen them at any time recently, even though you literally did see them recently, you have to make assumptions. What you do then, once you start branching from your assumptions, is you start verifying things with wards. If you ward over here, you'll see if he's doing his Gromp. If his Gromp's up, that means he can be on this side of the map. If his Gromp's down, it means he was on this side of the map. And then you start warding in other places too, right? But warding starts to catch them, and it lets you predict based off of where they are and where they need to be. But whenever you don't have wards, because this is early in the game, all you have are my assumptions to work with, which are some things you really need to pay attention to, because you really don't consider these at all with your aggression. And truly, the style you're playing is just feeling like you do more damage than the enemy character and feeling like you don't need a window to go in. You're not looking for any sort of advantage. You just are going in. Because you're fighting in minion waves, you're fighting when they have cooldowns, you're fighting when junglers should be up there without your own jungle, you're fighting down in summoners, you really aren't looking for any advantages, and you need at least something, some reason to go in. See, like, if you were playing aggressive as you were earlier, right here, right? If he throws out his Q and he misses it, and you went in, right? Okay, well, he hits his Q here. But there's only 2 minions that you would draw aggro from. Only 2. This is one of your better windows that you could go in, assuming he misses his ability. But since he hit it, if you somehow get an opportunity to walk up to him, which you Q near him just moments in this fight, you have that little bit of damage to guarantee your stun. Right? How easy would it have been for you to take that extra step and get your stun? You had the health disadvantage to get the stun, which means you could have had the follow-up damage. You would have been able to get a good trade here, but you're not even looking for it anymore, because you scared yourself out of it. And if you're tracking the enemy jungler, you just see him on this side of the map and you're warding. You have no awareness for where the enemy jungler is. This is your vision. You see him. Yasuo is mid, Trundle is bottom. What are you warding for? This ward's going to be dead by the time anything happens. You're warding because you're afraid, because you're not thinking. You're not thinking about where he is. You're not using your vision where it is. You don't need to tank this minion wave. You're going to take unnecessary damage. Yeah, if you wanted to freeze it, that's fine, but you wouldn't want to be auto-attacking like that if you were freezing it. You also aren't tracking your own lane because I don't see any Mias coming out whenever your laner goes missing. Gnar doesn't have great roams and he doesn't have a whole lot he could do around here. But if he really wanted to show up for this, there's a chance he could start walking down for it. Alright, you did signal he was missing, but you signaled he was missing. Look at this, look at this. Missing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I guess you signaled he was missing a good amount of time before. But he shows up back to your lane within 8 seconds, meaning he recalled, or I guess a little more than 8 seconds. He recalled and walked back to base. He could have walked to any lane in that time. Any lane. And you had no vision of him to know where he would have gone to go. That was a great window. Do you see what these windows are? Alright. This is... You have no disadvantage with resources, right? No resource disadvantages. In fact, you have an advantage because you have corrupting potions. Even though I think you're actually out of corrupting potion stacks. Minions. This is your third thing, right? You have more minions than him, so he can't chase you at least. And he only has 3 that you'd be getting aggro from, which is not that significant. And then the first thing, cooldowns. Is he going to use a cooldown? There's his cooldown, right? That's what a trade is. That's how you win this trade, and that's what you need to look for all of your trades. Resources, minions, cooldowns. And you go to ward again. Now, look down here. Why are you warding? Why are you warding? Because I count 3 people down here, and I count 1 person over here, and I count 1 person over here, so no one's missing. This is a wasted ward. And if you want to ward like this, right, you want to ward defensively, the best defensive ward you could get right now is warding way up here. Because then you're going to be able to track the Trundle later. Because you know where he is now. So now look where he will be. Confirm he's over here later. Out of mana. Unlucky. Part of the reason you're out of mana, though, is your own resource management. I was talking about resources being a big deal. One of the resources that is a big deal is mana. And you're using your W on the wave like crazy just to try and push it there, which means you were probably using your W a lot over here, which was the difference in this kill. Flash Q, right? Alright, you TP bottom. Let me watch that. I probably wouldn't have TP'd for this. So whenever you're looking for TP as top lane, it's ever since the nerf of TP, like the extra second, it's a lot harder to show up for fights late. Once a fight has already happened, right? And you're showing up for this because your team got engaged on. The best case scenario is you get a kill, right? But the best case scenario would also still have the person who was going to die dying. You're not going to ever turn a fight. You're never going to turn a fight with a top TP when it's late. That would be like they were already engaging. It's 4.5 seconds. Read a death cap and tell me how long it is, because it's not 4.5 seconds most of the time. It's like 2. And whenever you show up for this, it's a perfect example, right? Tell me what difference would happen here. Draven still has flash and heal. So Draven's definitely out. They're not going to be able to chase him and dive him. Draven is definitely out. Now, Draven might have died here, but he still had flash, so he shouldn't have died here. He stayed for this because you TP'd. Okay? So, you got a kill out of this. Great. But what else are you getting out of this? Because let's assume Gnar did not TP bottom and stayed top lane and got this XP lead. And Zoe didn't have to TP or something like that, right? Maybe Zoe still does TP. Right? They get out. And look at the advantage that was over here then. Yasuo was able to push in this and come back into the game a little bit, even though he's fucking feeding, so I wasn't paying attention to that. But Zoe's TP didn't get anything, right? That shows you TPing for a late fight is really hard. If you're trying to TP, you need to be thinking about it the way the professionals are doing it right now, and proactively TPing. So if you're going to go for a dive, right, with Zac, right? Zac comes here, he pinks this, and you TP to the pink ward, he starts the dive, and then they have a choice of going to the Zac or going to the turret. If they go to the turret, they then have 4 people on them. If they go to the Zac, then they're going to just die to the Zac. And you, since you're coming this way. But that's how you proactively do it. You come from behind, and you put a ward down, and you TP to that ward that's behind them, so then they're pinned. They're flanked. And now in this scenario, the Gnar still could have TP'd here, but as I was saying, like if you're proactively TPing or reactively TPing, reactively they're still going to die who was going to die. It's just that they might get a kill after it. But there are other things they could always be doing. There's other things you could always be doing. This XP and like money and like objective control up here is probably just as valuable as the kill you got, because watch what you're going to lose up here and mid, right? Right? That was probably 300 gold. And now let's do the same thing mid, because mid TP too. I just want to show you what TPs do. You can't show up with TPs late. It just doesn't work. It's not the same way that it used to be. Now watch this. And I'm sure you know this happens. I'm sure you know this happens. I'm just trying to show you it. That's probably 150 gold, 200 gold there. That means you lost a total of about 500 gold for 1 kill, which shows you that TP wasn't worth it, and they weren't going to get an objective out of it afterwards. Your team was able to get an objective out of it afterwards, but it was a coin flip that this was able to happen because the Yasuo was feeding. The Yasuo had a recall here because of what was happening in this lane. If the Yasuo was able to show up for this, you wouldn't have even been able to get this, because the Gnar was down there too. They still had the Trundle. The only person that died was a Brand. And if you're trying to say you're taking advantage of this with the TP and you wanted to show up for dragons and stuff like that, you need to see my dragon rant because I don't fucking care about dragons. Dragons are something that if you get the opportunity to take them, it's great, but you also lost a lot to take this. You lost a lot of your map potential. You can no longer set up a proactive play. You're not going to be able to set anyone behind because in the end, that bottom trade that you did was even. And then what happened on the rest of the map was probably a net loss. So you still lost on this play, and getting the Infernal just made it even. Just made it even. It wasn't a good play to get the Infernal here, and I'm not saying that you needed to beeline it back top lane in order to get the CS. You still were going to lose the CS. So yes, opportunity to take this at this point in time, yes, definitely do it with what happened. But you shouldn't have done this to get this, is what I'm saying. It wasn't a good play if your end game was Infernal Dragon, because you lost too much to do that, and you didn't gain enough. Right. So always you need to be looking for proactive TPs. Proactive TPs are stuff like if they have a ward behind. This is a proactive ward. This is a ward you can TP to. You can never TP behind, or rather, in the middle of a fight. And whenever you do this, it's not because your lane is getting ganked, right? It's not because the bottom lane is going to die for your team. It's because you're going to kill the enemy laners. Because if you can win that trade and kill the enemy laners, you will get an objective afterwards. That will mean that it's not only worth if your Gnar is still chipping away at this tower and can take this tower, so it's an even trade with towers, but you also will get that gold and guarantee the advantage because of a man advantage. So yeah, I didn't like that TP at all, if you can't tell. Huh. You're fighting in the minions here? And as Irelia, you only can fight in minions if you have your ult. Um, the main problem with this fight was I really he went in. That's actually what it was, I think, because his timer went out for his as soon as he went in. Yeah, that explains a lot because he wasn't able to kite it out. Okay, so you were taking advantage of him going in there, and you did have your R. I didn't see that. Okay, so yeah, okay. I'm actually totally fine with this. My bad. I wasn't aware that you were using your R during that, and that was crucial, and I wasn't aware that he jumped in there. Your fighting in minions, though, is a problem that you should be conscious of because it was very risky to do this. And if he hadn't used his jump in, he would have been able to use his jump out, which would have continued the kite and also been able to probably keep you in the minions longer. And that would have been the difference in this little amount of health. Whenever he went in, though, he mistimed his rage meter, which meant that you were able to try and take advantage of that, and I'm totally fine with that. That was fine. That was a resource and a cooldown he wasn't able to use and wasted. So yes, that was a good window to go in. My bad. If you're tracking the enemy jungler, I wouldn't have been confident that he was top, so I would say that that's an okay time to go in. This is really risky to stay for, even though you're Irelia. Yeah. So you may have survived there, but you used your stopwatch, and you still lost pretty much that whole wave. Okay. That was the best thing that could have happened there, so no complaints. And neither of you have TP, so this is fine. Irelia definitely does win this matchup early. What is he building? Alright. This ward I agree with. This ward I completely agree with because you could be expecting a rotation up towards top lane. Since the Vayne is here, that means she's going to probably want to try and take this turret, which means that potentially the Brand could have been coming up there, or the Trundle could have been up there to support her and get the turret. I agree with this ward, even though it is early and you know where everyone is or was, it's still a good ward because what you would be predicting the enemy to do. Yeah, and you just take the aggressive fights. At least you are taking aggressive plays. Aggressive plays are very important. Because whenever you already have an aggressive style, and you start looking for windows, correct windows to go in, you will find that you're able to win a lot more games. But to teach someone to be aggressive is a lot harder than to tone down aggression or to look for windows to when to play aggressive. I don't honestly really understand this matchup. So I'm not going to go too much into advice on that. I didn't know you were going to be able to kill Gnar that second time you went in, but apparently you did. However, I did tell you that the Vayne matchup was going to be a mixed bag, and that's because I play a little bit more Vayne than I do play Gnar or Irelia. And that stun thing that happened here, where you didn't get your stun off, proves that it really matters who gets the stun off. If you get a stun on her, you're going to probably win the matchup. If you don't, there's a good chance she can win it, especially before you get defensive stats, and you did not have any defensive stats. Now you do, but you did not. That's a smart disengage there. Once Vayne uses her ult, you can win that fight easily, so now you definitely have lane control. You see the Gnar's bottom. Pushing in like this is very smart, because you could probably even dive the Vayne if she stays under turret. So this is a very good play to be pushing here. You don't have any vision, but you do see their entire team down here, except for the Trundle and the Vayne. And I would expect, since their Trundle, well, yeah, the Infernal Dragon, they're fighting for it, so that would be where they are. You choosing to not come to this fight wasn't really a choice. You didn't know what was happening down here, and you were going to save top lane, I believe, from the Vayne. Let's see about how your TP went. As I mentioned, TPs are all about proactive plays. If you're only using TP for recalls, you are gravely misusing a TP. Because what does every other lane do? What does every other lane do? Every other lane just backs and walks to lane. What makes top lane special? Why does top lane take TP? Why? It's so they can show up to fights or split push or something like that, right? So if you use TP just for this, you're gravely misusing the ability too. This means I truly believe you don't understand how to use TP, because the only thing you have done so far with your TP, and look at the map, right? Tell me what your team is trying to do right now, looking at this map, right? Your team is trying to set up for a proactive play. Your team is trying to set up for Dragon. Your team is doing exactly what I mentioned your win condition was, playing into their jungle looking for the long-ranged engages. And you think that you're just going to get a tower. right? You're going to sneak a tower. Well, you didn't sneak a tower because what happens after this is someone comes to respond to you, and now you don't have TP. Right? Now you don't have TP. So what did your TP really get you here? It got you half a wave of minions. The first time you TP'd, net lost your team about 200 gold. The second time you TP'd, got you about 100 gold. You really are misusing your TPs. And then we already watched all of that. And this is what you can't show up for now. You can't set, even though you have a perfect flank ward for a proactive play, you can't do anything over here. And as top lane, one of the biggest complaints is that you have no impact on the rest of the map, right? You're isolated, you're on an island. Sometimes that's one of the beauties of playing top lane, but it's also one of the most common complaints. Well, watch this with me and tell me what you could have done here. Obviously, I'm just talking rhetorical stuff this whole time because it's just a video, but it's a question you should be thinking about. Because these guys are both almost dead. Vayne's coming over. Wow. I guess your team won that fight without you. Alright. Well, your team's doing pretty well. And you also have gotten some solo kills, so you're doing pretty well too. But one of the most important and least impressive things about this game, right, is not the outplay, but the strategy. Because once you get to your, like, true skill level, right, whatever skill, mechanical, whatever you think you can get to, you can still lose. And you can find an opponent that's just as skillful as you are in mechanics, probably in something like, you know, gold, silver, or whatever. It's just that the thing that makes it different is what you do on the map, what you do with the map, what strategies you do, what strategies you use, and how you close out games. That's all fine. So far, your biggest problems are windows to trade, using your potion, your corrupting potion / starting item choice. Your warding means you don't track the enemy jungler at all, and you waste all of your resources, and definitely your teleports. And you decided to go full split push build with building the Titanic. Are you building Titanic? Titanic's going to be a little bit better for team fighting, but it's putting you further behind in a team fight right away. So you're going to be split pushing for another few minutes. And here's your team's win condition. Long-ranged engages. This is an okay trade. Even though you might think that this isn't too good, there's no reason for you to show up to it now. Your choice was made a long time ago, whenever you bought your items. Your build is a split pushing build, and this means you only plan on split pushing until you complete your next, like, 2 items. Because this is not going to let you survive long enough in a fight where everyone's going to be trying to kill you on the front line. It's just not going to work. So what you're doing is fine with the decision that you made, but I disagree with your decision. Your team kind of needs you there to capitalize on who is getting super fed, right? The Zoe is super fed, and start playing into that. Your Zac is also really strong. And you're not that bad either, but you're investing resources into trying to split. Zoe's kit is not about splitting, it's about sieging. You need to be playing into that since that's what got ahead. If your Draven was the one who was super far ahead, then you would be fine doing what you're doing. because Draven's a great skirmisher and can then be playing into those. But really, you're not adapting to what your team's win condition is presently. Your team's win condition is not, right now, that you split. Your team's win condition is that you play into the Zoe's siege. You end up getting a turret, but they end up getting a turret, and they end up getting another turret, and they end up getting an inhibitor. This shows me that you don't play with your team at all. Because this is the second fight you have neglected to show up for, the first one being Dragon when you used TP to just get back to lane. This is the second one that you didn't show up for because you decided to build for split pushing. If you're playing a top laner that's for just split pushing, Irelia is fine to be doing that, but you need to be making sure that since Irelia is a versatile champion, you adapt to what your team can do, and you adapt with your team. Right here, it shows me that you just plan on split pushing no matter what's happening. No matter what your comp is, and no matter what your win condition is. To be basing here is completely unnecessary. You just keep going for it. Yep, there you pull out the TP. It's not a bad idea to be trying to rush Baron if you had the damage for it, but I don't think you do. You have no vision and you're hunting. You did have some vision, but that was enough vision to know they were there. You chasing it down was unnecessary risk, and that's another unnecessary risk. Okay, so now we're going to talk about when you pick your fights. So, answer me this. What are you getting by going over here? Because if you're looking at the map, the only answer you can give me is nothing. There is nothing over here for you to get. And if you think that you're going to get a kill by going over here, a kill is nothing. A kill is nothing. If you can't follow up with anything, a kill is nothing. So your two moves here is to control Baron and take Baron eventually, or siege mid and clear mid because they have supers in it because of your play earlier. So, do either of those plays require this? Because you didn't have enough vision to know that their team wasn't there. And they didn't even get an assist on it, right? It was only the Vayne. And then again, this goes into why you always are taking fights. You not only take fights when there are no advantages there for you because you had no flash, and Vayne still did have flash and heal, but you just constantly are playing aggressive, and it feels like you just plan on doing more damage than them. That's the type of playstyle that you just expect that you're fed enough to do this. But look at Vayne. Vayne's 9 and 2. She's more fed than you. She has stealth. She has a condemn. She has both of her sums. She has a window to get out. And even if you won this fight, there's a very good chance you would have been too low to do anything afterwards. Even if you had killed the Vayne, there's a very good chance you would have died afterwards. Because look at where their team is right now. And look at where your team is. You're taking fights just to take fights. You're taking fights because you feel like you can kill someone, but you don't care about what you could be getting. Because you die here, you give up all the Baron control that you had just set up. You see him clear out this pink ward? Now look, you have no vision of this. Luckily, you have the scuttle that you took earlier. Otherwise, they would just be able to do it completely free right now. So since you do have TP, you need to be going, let's see. Second Infernal Dragon might be important to go to, but you need to make sure you always are ready to come to the Baron, and since they're posturing for Baron, you have to be around Baron. I would be walking down towards Dragon because it seems like that's where your team is heading, but sticking towards mid lane to clear out mid wave. I really disagree with your build. BF, the only thing you can be building that into is GA, and you don't have enough health to be doing that yet. And your team doesn't need you to play as an assassin. You already have damage. Interesting. That's hilarious. They really didn't want that fight, and they ended up coming back into it. Yeah, there wasn't really a reason for them to jump out of that fight so hard. Do you see what they used to get out to? Your targeting choices are poor. You're looking over for the Brand who was obviously dead. Whenever there's someone like a Brand, they're reliant on only their abilities, and then they've already done what they're doing for a fight, and then they're not useful anymore. Vayne, meanwhile, you leave alone that entire time and let her flash over the wall. Once Vayne is over here, you then start looking into the fight, but they look back into it too, and now you look into it kind of too late, because then they were able to clean up with the Vayne. If you were able to get that little bit of damage on the Vayne to begin with, that probably would have been enough for that. So your targeting choice in fights, you only hunted for the kill whenever you needed to be doing something very specific. Your role here would have been definitely to get onto the Vayne. Since you're building like an assassin, you need to play like an assassin, but you shouldn't be building like that. This is really unnecessary by Vayne too, but not bad. Yeah, she should be out. Well, now it's a bad TP again. Because you need to be in this wave. If you were in this wave and you still had TP, you could have still showed up for this fight. And you, by TPing over here and forcing this, are making it so that way you have to immediately make a decision either to take this fight that you are trying to get or to go to the minions. And you take a fight where you have no vision because no one is set up for it. Your team isn't even ready for it yet because you start running in too soon. And the only reason you're there is because you're like, oh shit, they're going to do Baron, right? Whenever you have that move speed buff coming out of base, do you see your team's already here? Your team pretty much respawned at the same time as you. One of these dudes died at practically the exact same time as you. You use all your abilities to go in on the Yasuo, who is at this point 1 in 10. Look at that. If you had done like 100 damage to Vayne, she would have been dead. Yeah, your targeting needs work. You don't have TP to be doing this. You really can't be bottom there. You walk back with your team though, which is good. Alright, and you should lose the game here. Because they have Smite. Brand overstayed. Vayne is trying to go for kills instead of attacking the Baron. Yeah, their team greatly misplayed that. They could have just gone to the Baron, but they turned for the fight one at a time. Alright. That was a very lucky pickup. You're posturing way too far back for these fights. You're posturing where Zac is. You're not Zac. You don't have that kind of engage. You're late showing up for that, and you let the Vayne get out even though she was CC'd. To your positioning. Vayne's right here. Too far back to follow up on it. And because of that, she gets out, and now they win this fight. Oh, do they not win this fight? Ooh, let me see what they did then. I was just thinking that it was over. Ooh, the Zoe. I see that. I was wondering what happened to Vayne. Alright, alright. Good bubble, Zoe. The Vayne shouldn't have gotten hit by that, but it happens. Alright, nice. And that should be the game for your team then. Unnecessary by Zoe, but... Oops. That is a good TP. That is a good TP. That is a good TP. And let's go kind of over what's the difference between a reactive TP and a proactive TP, right? Well, this is a reactive TP, but it's also a proactive TP. Because right here, the fight is a 4 versus 3. You're showing up to where their team hasn't fully engaged yet. This is not a late TP. This is an early TP. Because there's the rest of their team, and you still have the numbers advantage. There's the rest of their team, and you still have the numbers advantage. Yeah, that was your first good TP of the game. And I think that was the only TP you needed, but you've really got to clean up your TPs. And you still lose this fight. Ooh, interesting. I wonder what's been going on. Must have been some positioning things. I'll go ahead and look back at that for you. You for this fight definitely had good targeting though. I saw you kill the Vayne right away. Whatever happens afterwards, I don't remember. The 1 in 10 Yasuo came in hard. Is that it? Yep. Yep, that's what happened. Yasuo cleaned you guys up. Also was Draven standing a bit too close, but mostly was Yasuo getting his double knockup. Interesting. Two and 13 now. You can't really be going top here because you do not have TP. If you go top and they collapse on a bottom fight, you're not able to do anything with it. You're only coming top to try and out 1v1 this guy, which doesn't have to be a 1v1 because their enemy team could be here. I would be setting up with your team bottom. You're hunting this 1v1. You don't really need to. You would have been here for this. This is so messy. A lot of misplayed team fights, a lot of wasted TPs, a lot of unnecessary fights, a lot of fights that were just... what did you expect to happen over there? You saw the cone, the blast cone thing, the vision scrying thing. You knew they were all over there waiting for that red. You've even lost 1v1 to the Vayne before, whenever she gets the jump on you. Since Vayne chose bottom, this should be pretty free. That was great, Zach ult. Yeah, okay, finally. So that's gotta be the game. If it's not, then I'm just gonna end here anyways. But your biggest problems, definitely you don't have any tracking of the enemy jungler. You'd have no idea when to ward. You ward just because someone told you to do it, and you don't think about when you ward because you're not watching the map, which means that even if you did ward here, the odds of you looking at the minimap to see someone coming are slim. This ward isn't usually enough to save you. It's enough to save you against some junglers, but not all. If you see a Rammus at this point, right, you're already dead. It doesn't matter if you see him here because he's coming in at 100 miles an hour. This is not a good ward, and you didn't ward at a good time. You also don't pick fights that you have any sort of advantage in. Your starting item is also something I disagree with. You don't play towards your team's win condition at all. You let your team fight without you probably 3 times, and you've seen how that can go both ways. Whenever you leave it to a coin flip, whenever you have no advantage, every one of those team fights is a coin flip. Because you're waiting for either the Vayne to misposition and get bubbled, or your Draven to step up too much and get knocked up by the Yasuo. You're waiting for something to happen, and it's just as likely that it's on your team. You need to set up fights where you have an advantage. Your TPs are also very bad and need work. Whenever you TP late to this fight, you didn't change anything. Whenever you TP to this fight, you were still early. What happened after that was a mix of misplays from your team and also targeting from your team. Whenever you came back into that fight, your positioning allowed for that knock-up partially. Your team fighting positioning and targeting needs some work. I disagree with your assassin build specifically because of the team comp you're working with and your role for this team comp. Your role should not be to assassinate the Vayne. If you can do that, that's great. But for your item choices, like, I really didn't like how early armor and wasn't that much of a priority to you. You got one armor item and then you started building, Titanic and stuff like that. You need to be focusing more on adapting your build. I feel like you adapted slightly by saying, all right, I'm going to focus armor, but you didn't get it early, which meant you weren't able to go in at all. That's the reason that partially you were losing those fights to the Vayne up top and the Vayne over here, because you had no armor yet. Your Split push focus is somewhat problematic, especially with the way you waste your TPs. If you're going to be playing like this, you need to make sure you're ready to use your TPs. You need to be playing smarter with vision. And I don't trust you to be playing with vision right now because you've seen people when you've been warding and meaning you don't look at the minimap. Whenever you're split pushing, you need to be very cautious of when someone disappears from Fog of War. And if you're telling me you do that, then tell me why you waste your wards. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Your wave management, I didn't actually get to see a whole lot of this game because it's a really kind of troubling matchup. You tried to freeze a couple of times, which meant you tanked minions. I don't really think you really got anything out of that. You also never set up any sort of slow pushes or anything. You never really rotated. You always just came back to this lane to push it. So I didn't get to see any sort of wave management this game, which is a key part of top lane and bot lane, not really mid lane. Mid lane goes to waves to kind of just fix them, but not really to set them up. So I would really like to see more like slow pushes where you then rotate to a secondary lane. Then not only do you have top wave pushing in, but you're split pushing mid, so someone has to respond to you, and then your team is bottom, so then someone has to respond to them. So what do? You guarantee you have a numbers advantage somewhere, and if there is no numbers advantage, that means that you're just getting free turret damage with that slow push you set up. This isn't even part of your strategy as playing top lane because you only hard push this lane like you're Tryndamere. And that's not good. Your dueling is okay. You go in just whenever you all the time, basically. You just only look for these engages. And that might be why you decide to build so much damage, so you can kill the 1v1s. Top lane may seem like it's a 1v1 lane, but if it's only a 1v1 lane, just wait till the jungler shows up, and then tell me it's not a 1v1 lane. Or still a 1v1 lane. Because that's definitely a 2v1 lane, and then once you've lost this matchup to the jungle, what do? Because then you've only lost this game if your only focus is to split push. So then you team fight, right? Because you're behind and you team fight. No, that's what you should have been doing kind of anyways. And if you don't put any focus on team fighting, then the Gnar with the numbers advantage is going to show up to that fight, kill your entire team with the 5-man advantage over 4, and look for an objective afterwards, and then send someone to stop you while they take, as I said earlier, 2 turrets and an inhibitor for your 1 turret. That is an example of exactly what happens when you only split push. So you really need to be looking more into some team play. And the way you use your teleport can be a big part of that, but you're not using your teleport correctly at all. I don't know if I really mentioned too much your potion use at level 1. Level 2, you started Corrupting Potion, and if you have Corrupting Potion, you need to use it, otherwise it's a wasted item. In my mind, you should just skip that and go Dorn's shield, because that's going to do what your Corrupting Potion does, and you don't have to remember to use it. I don't remember you buying a pink ward. I really would like to see a pink ward, specifically around Baron, because this is going to defend your lane, and it's a pink ward you can typically keep up. This will help defend your lane up until like 20 minutes before your team starts rotating over to this. It's also going to defend mid lane, and it's also going to protect your jungle. Whenever you're not contributing to vision, because for starters, your vision didn't spot anyone out this entire game, but you also didn't buy a pink ward to help your team. You relied on your team just winning their matchups. By the way, the Yasuo is 2-15, so I think that kind of played into your team having an advantage here. You can't rely on that. That's just a coin flip. And you don't track the jungles, so you can't safely even rely on yourself to get fed because you're going into these matchups not knowing what kind of thing will be there. You're just taking fights and expecting you'll do more damage. That's not safe. Alright, well, that's the end of this review. Hope some of it was helpful. And, yeah, that's it.